Afternoon, Tim. How you doing?
Afternoon, Shabbar. I'm good. I'm a little tired because I was running a money workshop over the weekend. It was very interesting. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. I feel like I'm flagging slightly. It's like the first working day of Ramadan actually today. So in fasting mode, which yeah, the sort of the sugar levels are dropping slightly as we approach sort of 1 o'clock lunchtime, where I usually have had a couple of teas or coffees and maybe something to eat. So yeah, but I still feel like I'm on top form actually. So yeah, we'll crack on.
So you have a month of
Yeah,
fasting,
month of fasting.
and that's not eating at all between sunrise and sunset.
No food or drink
Oh
between.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Yeah. Oh, it'd be really interesting to maybe hear more about that or thought
yeah,
more about. My son's school has a lot of Ramadan celebrations, and we're all invited. Is it iftar?
yeah. Breaking the fast.
We're all invited to this kind of community school iftar, and I always want to go, but my kids are like, nah, dad, you can't, nah. They're embarrassed for me to go to school stuff. But I think I might just go one year.
Yeah, go.
Yeah,
It's
I'd like
it's quite nice. Good
yeah,
good vibe, and you'll get a good feast hopefully
that'd be
as well.
great. Well, maybe I'll suggest it this year.
Oh,
Anyway,
all right, let's get cracking with this week's conversation. So this is just something that happened in my life a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about it offline, and we thought, oh, this would be quite good to discuss. And I'm always keen to talk about these sort of experiences because I can't be the only one that's having them. But basically, my my daughter wanted to go to the local indoor climbing place in Watford, and it was actually it's funny because she was invited to another kid's birthday the week before, but she wasn't well. We said, look, don't worry. If you can't go to the party, Daddy will take you next week, to the same place. So she was all excited that she was going to get a special day with just her and Daddy at the rock climbing place, and there was going to be pizza afterwards for her as well because she would have missed out on the on the pizza part of the party. So we went, booked in, and she started climbing. She was all excited, and then for some reason she'd go up like a few of the whatever you want to call them, a few of the rungs of the ladder, or
the holes. I think they're called
yeah,
holes.
she'd go up a few of them. So maybe not even a meter or two up, and then she'd just like abseil back down with the rope. And I was like, okay, maybe she's just getting warmed up. I was like, oh, do you want to go a little bit higher? And she was like, no, I just like going up. I just like doing it like this. And I know she's been with my wife before, and she's climbed higher up, because I saw the pictures and the videos. And so she kept just doing this, like, climbing up to about a meter and then like jumping back down. And I'm starting to get quite irritated, I've noticed. And I'm like, no, go higher, go higher. And she's like, no, I don't want to. Now, whether she was hungry or she just wasn't in the mood, I mean, she's 4 years old. So, there could be a whole host of things sort of going on inside. And it was funny because my immediate frustration took me to a place of, well, this is just a waste of money. And it was really eating away at me because it wasn't even a lot of money, in
How
the
much
grand.
was it? How much did you pay for climbing?
I think it must have been £14 or something like
Right,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not a huge amount. And I think what, I've wasted money on in the past, it could be in the hundreds on certain things. But this was just really irritating me because in my mind, she wasn't maximizing the experience by climbing higher. And it only took me until sort of a little bit later on when she was getting frustrated with me for telling her to keep going higher that I realized, freaking hell, Shabba, what the hell are you doing? Like, even if she wants to just climb, a meter high, if that's giving her enjoyment, then isn't that the aim of the game? Just let her have some fun and enjoy the experience. But because this value for money was there, it totally interfered with the experience. And I feel like, well, I lost out. And it was only when we went for pizza afterwards, I felt really bad inside because I was like, damn it, you've lost sight of what was important, and you were just fixating on this. Oh, we've just wasted money. We could have just gone to the park and done climbed the same heights and had the same fun, and it just saved 14 quid, and it left me feeling a bit sad, but also wanting to sort of reflect and say, what's going on, because I think that must have occurred in several other places in my life where the experience has been soured because of some sort of thinking around money and value and getting ripped off, maybe, all of that sort of stuff comes up. And so I thought, well, do you know what? Let's try and get to the bottom of this.
Okay, so there's lots of ways we could take it. I'm quite interested actually in talking about parents and children with money at all stages in life. It comes up a lot on workshops. I was talking about it this weekend. I think what you're saying is, from that story with your daughter, you said, yeah, I can think of other situations where it's almost like my quest for value for money, or my preoccupation with value for money, or not wasting money, ends up actually a little bit ruining the experience. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so.
Can you think of other examples? It just helps to give more examples. So where else am I, or just typically, where else am I focused on value for money and then I don't necessarily enjoy it?
I think maybe when we go out to eat, and if the food isn't great, I would let that sour the experience, because I'd be thinking, oh, damn it, this is a rip-off. So I think definitely it's around food and going out.
So it sounds like kind of going out and doing stuff, climbing, eating.
Yeah,
maybe we talked a bit about holidays, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Hotel stays could be one, actually.
Yeah.
Which we did talk about previously, didn't we? But in a slightly different context, in the episode of my trip to London. I think that was a slightly different flavour of what was going on.
But it sounds like when you're buying or paying money for, quotes, an experience rather than, I don't know, a sofa or a golf club or a car, where there's something tangible, that somehow that throws you more into a wobble.
Yeah, actually could be experiences. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, did you and your daughter have a nice time in the end?
We did, but I felt very guilty afterwards.
Right. Okay.
But I think the pizza sort of made up for it.
Okay. Well, maybe there's a few different angles we can try, and probably not today. Maybe we do a conversation about parents and their children around money specifically. Yeah.
No,
it sounds like your daughter wasn't too bothered about money. She was just doing what she does. I guess one place to start is, you were talking about, she wasn't, or maximizing the experience. You used that phrase, maxim. So if she'd climbed 5 meters, she'd somehow got the most out of the experience. And I understand rationally you've caught it, and you would tell me, no, that's silly. But emotion, there was something that did grip you, right?
Yeah.
This is what happens with money stuff. I mean, usually we're so gripped by the money, so we don't even notice, even during or after. So we just are in a bad mood because we've been ripped off, or someone didn't do this, or we're scared because, there's this money situation. And so even the fact you could kind of notice it, go, what on earth am I doing, is quite helpful. Maybe it sounds ludicrous, but so in that old way of thinking, if she'd climbed right to the top, that would have maximized the experience.
Yeah, because just in my mind, we've paid to go somewhere to climb.
Yes.
And to scale a height and experience that, climbing to the top. And therefore, if you don't climb to the top or near to the top, it's almost like, well, what was the point of paying for that experience? That's really, on a rational level, that's all it is. It's like, we've paid to go climbing, therefore we should climb.
Yeah, well, she did climb.
Yeah.
She climbed quite a lot of times. Probably she climbed more time. If it was maximizing the number of times I climbed, she did more than if she got to the top. Maybe there's a couple of things to say. I know you've done this exercise because I've done it with you, about money value. So I got this from a coach called Rich Litvin, and I found it very helpful. And one thing he does is he says, well, look at all the different areas of life. And I don't mean like a budget list, like I've got to spend on food and clothes, but almost just categories of life. So yeah, having fun, or studying and self-development, or health, or I don't know, art and culture, right? Or it might be, having a beautiful house, or buying presents for people I love. It could be anything. But leaving aside money that you need to spend on bills and rent and food, what are the priorities of where you want to spend your money? And I mean, maybe you can comment, but I found that really, really helpful, because it made me think, well, where do I want to spend discretionary money, and where is less important? So for example, I've got a nice house, I'm very lucky, but actually buying lots of nice things for my house and nice cushions and furniture and stuff is very low on my list right now, because I've got 2 kids and often the house is messy and they kick footballs about and stuff gets broken and it's low. So then when I don't spend money on those things, that's fine. I feel quite relaxed, right? But then what I chose to put nearer the top is actually, for me, spending money on having nice experiences with my kid, because mine are a lot older than 4, and you reach a point where you go, actually, they're not going to be around forever. And that made me feel much more relaxed when I do spend money on, holidays or travel. But I guess what I'm interested in is, what do you think she wanted? You wanted to maximize the experience, which for you somehow meant get to the top. Otherwise, it was a waste of money. What do you think daughter wanted, really?
She wanted pizza. because as soon as we got in there, she was like, "Oh, when are we going to have pizza?"
Okay.
So I think maybe there was a hunger thing. Maybe there was a hunger thing, or she just really wanted the pizza. And actually, she wasn't too bothered about the climbing on this occasion, because she really had her stomach set on the pizza afterwards, because pizza is her favorite food at the moment. That's what she really likes. So yeah, I think it was. But what was she really valuing? I honestly, I actually don't know. Maybe it would have been good to ask her, like, what was she?
Yeah, and sometimes when we're 4, or even when we're 44, we don't necessarily know.
No.
Okay, so she wanted pizza, and you said it got better once we went for pizza.
Yeah, that's all she kept asking whilst we were there was, when are we going to have pizza? So
really?
She may have been she may have been actually quite hungry when we got there.
Yeah,
which might have been she wasn't really that bothered about climbing. That could have been one thing.
That's kind of interesting. So again, there's different angles, and it's for you. Maybe this is why it's good to think of different examples, right? When we do what we call in this work detective work, we're trying to see different patterns and stuff. One bit of me thinks maybe your irritation actually had some real intelligence behind it, because some part of you knew she's not actually into climbing today. She just wants pizza.
Yeah. And we've got to stick it out to get the value for money.
Right. So it comes back to the value of money. Yeah. So in an ideal world, I might have known before I paid the ticket, the £14, she's not really into it. We'll just go for pizza.
Yeah. That could easily have been the right play on that occasion. That actually we won't climb. We'll just go for pizza.
Okay. So maybe that, we don't know, but maybe that was the right step.
Maybe I was kicking myself for being not a bad parent, but just not being intuitive enough, or like picking up on the fact that it wasn't a good day to do climbing or what have you. So there may have been some kind of self-criticism around the whole climbing thing. Maybe.
So let's try some scenarios, because it's good when we're investigating money beliefs to just try different thought experiments and scenarios to see what comes up. So it sounds like if just before you'd hand over your 14 quid, you'd said to your daughter, do you actually want to climb, or should we just go for pizza? And she said, I just want pizza, Daddy.
Yeah.
That would have been okay.
Perfectly fine.
Perfectly fine. And then I wouldn't have had whether it was beating myself up or this value for money thing. Okay. And maybe with the 14 quid I saved, I would have even bought more pizza, or
maybe ice cream. Yeah, extra ice cream. Yeah.
Okay. But once you'd got there, it sounded like whatever the evidence about whether she was enjoying it or not, you were kind of locked in because you'd spent your 14 quid.
Yeah, we'd booked it.
You'd booked it. Oh, you get all quite stern.
So we need to do some climbing.
because otherwise it's a waste of money.
Yeah.
And then when she only did sort of meter climbing and jumped down, well, that's a waste of money.
Yeah, it was. And also maybe some sort of projection of be brave, or achieve something, like climbing to the top, like that.
Yeah. Well, that's the piece. That's where I went when I first heard the story, and that takes me to a whole thing about parents and their children. So let's come back to that. Yeah, go higher. And she said, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And there's a real metaphor for how a lot of parents are with their children. Go higher, go faster, do this. I don't want to. That's not what I want.
Yeah, there.
So maybe we come back to that actually in this episode. Let's just stay a little bit with value for money, because it's quite funny. And I'm sure lots of people listening can recognize, how value of money, if you're too concerned with value for money, you enjoy the experience less, right? Because you're so much with your evaluative mind and your judgmental mind. And then I'm not really in the experience, whatever's happening. I'm outside the experience, weighing up whether I'm getting value for money. And then probably the biggest thing stopping me have fun is not the money or the thing, it's my kind of evaluative mind, right?
Spot on. That's exactly what it was.
Okay. So if daughter said, actually, Daddy, before I pay my 40 quid, can we just go for pizza? That's fine. If she'd climbed to the top and looked like she was having fun, that would have been fine, because she'd be doing what you thought counted as a good use of money.
Yeah.
Right? But when she's only climbing, she may or may not have been having fun. Maybe she was hungry. But for you, it's like, that's a waste of money, because we're not going to the top, and I want her to go to the top, and I have an agenda about what would make this money worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You've got an agenda.
Yeah. The wicked parent with the agenda.
Well, I don't think you have to go to wicked.
Yeah.
I think we can be a bit more humorous than that, and a bit lighter. You
Okay.
just had an agenda.
Yeah.
And you get a bit uptight and angsty when you don't think it satisfies the agenda. So again, there's some different directions we could take this. One is, if my value judgment, my money value was, one of the things I happily spend money on is just doing fun things with the kids. That might free it up a bit. You say, look, it doesn't matter, we're here, it's 40 quid. But I've already decided one of the things I Shabbar spend, discretionary money on, or am relaxed to spend money on, is this sort of thing. So that can help. The other thing, I think, is going a bit more connected to the life path. And remember, on the life path, our questions, or even our evaluations, if we have them, or our agendas, are less about numbers. On the money path, we focus on numbers. How much money? How much did it cost? But also, how high did she climb is a number.
Yeah.
Yeah. She only climbs 1 meter, and I want her to climb 5. So I'm kind of fixated on a number, and I think the number represents what I really want here.
Yeah, it's almost like the number signifies what's important, and the value is derived from the number, as opposed to the value being derived from the experience that you had and enjoying, which is so true. We look at I look at a lot of things that take place, and we've been talking a lot about this sort of the life path, and it's almost like the conditioning is, everything's about the number, and even with this, it's quite pervasive in the way it just sneaks in, that even in what should be a very enjoyable, intimate sort of time with your child, ends up being about a bloody number.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't say this with criticism. It ends up being about the number because that's what you were bringing to it. For whatever reason, you were in a very kind of number-centered, money-centered thing. So you said something really important there. So I'm going to just repeat my version of what you said. You said, you focus on the number because you think the number, like, how much did it cost, or was it good, quote, value for money, or how high did she go, or all of these sorts of things. determines whether it was enjoyable, but actually it's the experience itself that, regardless of what I spent on it or how high she goes or how many times, what I really want is a good experience with my daughter on a whatever it was Saturday morning.
Yeah.
But there is something about when money changes hands. Let's do another thought experiment. If your mate ran the climbing center and you never had to pay, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to pay because you just walk in, it's your mate.
Yeah.
And then your daughter, who was maybe hungry and really wanted pizza, but she went and did a few 1 meter ones and How would that be?
It wouldn't have been as intense a feeling,
Yeah.
but there still would have been the missed, almost like the missed opportunity or the missed potential of, you know, putting yourself and climbing higher when you can do it.
Got it.
Or
Okay.
maybe, or actually maybe you're fearful, or I don't want that particular trait to be in my child. I want my child to be, you know, ambitious and a go-getter and climb to the top. Again, it's a number thing, right? It's like, I want you to do this.
Well, there's also a projection, because when you talk about yourself and your own business, I would use to say was you, Shabba, want you to, you know, not be scared and go for the top and reach your potential. But by the way, there is something important for parents, and particularly fathers. I mean, both, but archetypally, one of the archetypal roles of the father is to, you know, encourage and get people to do some risky things or push past their boundaries, you know, children. So I'm not knocking that. Perfectly reasonable to be, you know, the stronger adult figure, encourage someone to, you know, get past their fears. But it sounds like the reason it pisses you off, right? Because you could want it and you could say, come on, darling, you can go high, you can do better. And she turned around and go, Daddy, I don't want to.
And that's
fine. Want to do that. You might say, well, are you sure? It might be fun. You could do it. No, Dad, I don't want to. I'm happy doing this and I want pizza. At a certain point, the reason it pisses you off, so you can still offer the stretch and offer the guidance, but the reason it pisses you off sounds like that is to do with something to do with money and maybe a bit about your own projection about how high you would like to be.
Yeah, I think it's all very true. And when you look back at it, actually, the enjoyment for her might have just come from, like you said, going up, bouncing back down, and doing the sort of the abseiling bit, and she'd happily do that. Yet for me, it's a whole collection of different things, right? There's the money thing, there's the projection thing, there's the parent wanting to stretch, you know, your child sort of thing, all of that. And this is all just, I mean, this is why this stuff just blows my mind, right? Because this is just like the most innocuous little event on a Saturday, yet there's so much stuff within it. It's absolutely unreal how this stuff just gets into every little nook and cranny of your life.
Well, it does. So a couple of points. First, for anyone listening, you know, and I really enjoy our conversation, Shabba, particularly when it starts with something apparently small, like you bought some socks and you didn't feel good about it. And the reason is sometimes people bring to a workshop or some coaching a big money thing, right? There's a big thing going on. There's a big decision. They're selling a business. They've got some money trauma. They're really paralyzed with their pension planning, right? So sometimes it's really big, and you can dive into that and you can get into what's really going on. And you can also discover just as much from something that doesn't look big, like I took my daughter climbing and she only climbed 1 meter and I paid 14 quid and I was really angsty and I kind of regret that, right? The reason is that psychologically, you know, these important parts or blind spots get tied into money, and they will be activated or surfaced whether it's a big or a small money situation. And that's why what you're saying is you can look at something that seems quite, you know, trivial or small and discover something big about yourself, because the same thing that makes it hard for you to just go, okay, you sure you don't want to go high? You could go high, it could be fun. And she goes, once she said a couple of times, no, I really don't want to do that, you know, the same thing that stops you going, okay, fine, is operating in other areas of your life too, as you've pointed out. So it is fascinating. All right. So it sounds like, yeah, so if your mate ran the climbing centre, it would be better, but not fully better.
I think there would still be,
Yeah.
it would still be an issue. It's just that you would have eliminated the value for money issue.
Right.
That would have been taken out of the equation. It would have just have been the
Climb higher.
climb higher because higher is better, and
Yes.
and you'll be, and maybe you will be better
Yeah.
in my eyes if you climb higher.
Yeah.
Maybe subconsciously, and no one wants to say that out loud.
Yes.
And it does cringe me to say that, but
Yeah.
and we see this a lot through, you know, my upbringing, especially within sort of communities, etc. The whole idea of like grades and
Yes.
how good your child is based on the attainment level, which is something, you know, and the competition between parents around my kid got this many A's and, you know, etc. I don't know, you know, especially in a very close-knit community where everyone knows what everyone else is doing and how they're achieving. I think almost we could be using our kids as a status game as well.
Inevitably.
Yeah.
So there's so much in what you're saying. So let me just try and summarize some steps, right? The first thing is the value for money. So what I really want is a good experience with my daughter. But somehow unconsciously the proxy is how much did I spend and did it go how I want, my definition of fun. So that's one place I get caught up in numbers. The number, in this case, how much I spent, becomes some sort of proxy for how it should be. And of course, what I miss is the more I'm focused on my agenda and the number, the less I can be open to the actual experience, which could have been really fun. Then the other number you got focused on, which wasn't so much to do with money, was how high. And there is something really interesting about I would have liked her to go higher, to climb higher, to reach her potential. And you're right, probably all, you know, many people and certain cultures or subcultures particularly push children to go higher according to their agenda. Because what you didn't say to your daughter, and I'm not blaming you because most of us don't, is, darling, what for you would be really great in this thing, or what for you would be really challenging or scary? She might say, I want to jump off the rope as many times as I can, Daddy. Or, right, so I've got my agenda about how high and what it means, whether it's A grades or this grade, etc. And then, you know, the other step is consider, based on how irritated you were, that may be a projection about something about your own wish to go high or reach certain grades, which, great, if you make it conscious, go for it. It's almost like you need to be your own encouraging coach daddy. Say, come on, Shabbar, at the beginning of Monday, how high can you go, mate? Come on, you can go higher. You can write more blogs. You can get more clients. You can do more excellent work. It's almost like that encouraging, challenging coach could be useful internally. What do you think?
I think that's quite a good point to take on. Because even, you know, we've had conversations even within my business sphere. That's a recurring theme, right? Plateauing, not fulfilling potential, you know, feel like there's more you could be doing, but you know, for whatever reason, bit of fear, bit of, you know, worrying too much about what people will think. The whole religious money debate we've had, you know, that's another episode, you know, religion and money and the debate around that. So yeah, definitely a projection of that was taking place, and I quite like the idea of actually the softer approach. And just as you coach your child, sometimes you need to coach yourself in a very similar way, and that makes
that parental voice of wanting her to do well and climb high, but also being a bit pissed off that she didn't and judgmental. That's probably, you've got both sides of that parental voice in you, and so again, with all this work, it's just to make it as conscious as possible. And then you can choose which bits of that are less helpful, you know, judging yourself like you judged her for not climbing high enough, probably not so helpful. But the challenging coach about you could go higher and maybe you should do scary things. And don't worry, I'm here to catch you if you fall. Could be super useful. this thing about go higher, I don't want to, it just made me think of a friend of mine whose son from a very, very young age was fascinated by film and wanted to make films. And he was on a mobile phone, even his dad's mobile phone before he had one, making little kind of movies and edits, you know, nothing amazing, but he was fascinated and he would watch movies and just really, really interested, and said at quite a young age, I mean, I reckon 7, 8, I want to be a film director, and was talking at 7 or 8 about, I want to go to film school. And to me, I don't know if that's what he would end up doing, but in that moment, that's a life path impulse, right? Because he's not just made it up, he's actually doing stuff around it. He's spending his weekends making funny little videos and learning how to do editing software. And, you know, clearly there's a passion. And his mum and dad, you know, and I love them to bits, they're friends of mine and they're great people, said, well, you could go to film school after university, right? So there's a conflict there between, you know, go higher, reach your dreams, but do something sensible first, just in case it doesn't work out. So again, I think this sort of go higher according to my agenda, be successful according to my agenda, have a great time according to my agenda is something that parents do a lot of. And the question of, can we listen to, I don't want to. I'm having fun doing this. I like doing this. This is meaningful to me. Children often have their own version of what is their life path, you know, whether it's, I want to be a film director, or Daddy, I just like jumping off from a meter. And often our own agendas, we don't really listen to that, or we think we know better. And that's one way we condition children actually not to. I'm not having a go at you, by the way, for the rock climb, but in general, we transmit so many messages about money and life and what's important. And we think we're doing it for the best of our children. But if we're honest about our own lives, we're not convinced we're quite, you know, where we really want to be or have made those decisions. So it's very good to be, you know, skeptical of some of the agendas we play out with our kids. I think that's a whole other conversation, perhaps.
That is another conversation. So we were going to be wrapping up this one, which feels like there was a lot. I think there was a lot in there, as there is with all of our conversations, but specifically around this, because it's very close to home and quite personal for me. But it has given me this great perspective and insight, just talking it through around the fact that every time we do go out and we do something, I think there is an agenda. That word really sticks out for me. And it could be an agenda, the way you behave, the way you talk, how high you climb, you know, how fearful you are, or how ambitious, or whatever it is. There's just an agenda of, you know, what I would like you to be like. Right. And I think that just interferes with the experience of life itself, right?
Beautifully put. So if you were asking, as we often do, what could someone take away and work with after this? I think it's exactly that. It would be tune into what you really want deep down, that's kind of beyond an agenda, because the agenda is it has to go this way or that way, whereas the life path, I would say, is more a quality than a quantity. So it's not, I need to spend this much time doing it, or climb this high, or spend this much money. It's the quality. How would I like the experience to be? I want to have a lovely time with my daughter and us both feel happy. Could be. Or I want us to try something new. But it's about, as you say, what would I really love the experience to be, kind of regardless of the money. And then notice that the experience may come in a very different way to my agenda. So we could have a lovely time just going for pizza, or she could have a lovely time doing something completely different in the climbing center that wasn't my agenda, but the experience could still be there. And I think the other thing is to notice, the more I'm uptight about my agenda and the money and stuff, the less I'm with the experience and the less I'm open to the experience of what might happen. So I think for people listening, just to kind of really be open with the experience when they go out rather than the money equation.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway, and definitely one that I'm gonna use now, because I think if you remove the agenda, you just open yourself up to a range of possibilities, some of which you might not even be aware of, you know, and how your child might actually react or interact with you when you're not pushing your own agenda.
Yeah. And let me say two more things on that point, because I think you've articulated it beautifully. One is, the more I can do that, the more I can be with the actual experience and not caught up with the numbers and the value for money and the time. And I'm giving my child a model of a grown-up who goes through life not totally fixated or uptight on how things should be, or the money, but who's actually open to life. So that's probably quite a good lesson, right? And the other thing is, you made this really important thing about, with the climbing, I want her to reach her potential. I don't want her to miss an opportunity or miss her potential. But when I'm with the agenda, with my fixed view, the missed opportunities, she didn't climb high enough, or we didn't get good enough, this, that, or the other. But from a life point of view, the real missed potential is, I'm so uptight about the money, I'm not actually with the experience. And then I miss the opportunity of an hour with my daughter, or I miss the opportunity that we could just have a really good time. So I think I have to focus on the money or the spending or this, because otherwise there'll be some missed opportunity. But actually, the more I'm uptight about it, I'm actually missing kind of the present moment opportunity.
Great. I think we should leave it there.
Cool. All right. That's an interesting conversation.
It was, Tim. I'll see you next time.
See you later. Bye, Shabbar.
Bye-bye.